Welcome to Southern Sense Talk on Rumble. You are going to love Annie the Radio Chickadee Ubelis and her co-host, C.S. Bennett. You'll find them live here on Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Date Time. Check out their website at Southern Sense, as in commonsense.net. It's that easy, southernsense.net. So sit back and relax. They're informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey.
My bad. I forgot to put us back on the stage. You know, I never start off the show smoothly. So welcome to Southern Sense once again. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, Annie Ubellis, along with my co-host and author, Curtis C.S. Bennett.
Hey.
Leave it up to me to mess it up.
Hey, it's Friday.
Oh, thank God it's Friday. TGIF. Listen, we got ourselves a jam-up show today. Our dedication is going to be a special dedication. The founder of the Heritage Foundation, Edwin J.Feulner, passed away last week. So Bridget Wagner, who's the executive director of the Edwin J.Feulner Institute at Heritage, will be joining us to talk to us about Ed. We have also coming back on the show, Michael McNamara, Mac. He's the author From Trauma to Joy, Life-Changing Lessons That Fellow U.S. Marines Taught Me. And he's got a new book coming out called Colleen Can't Forget. We also have a friend of ours, hasn't been on with us for a while, and that's my bad, because I keep on flagging his articles. He is the editor and founder of A&D magazine. He's also a public speaker and host of Ground Truth, Charles Sam Faddis. So Sam will be joining us also. He's going to be talking to us about what's going on with Russiagate. And boy, does he have some inside scoops and insights into that, because being former CIA, he's in the know. So we got a lot to talk about and a lot to do. But Curtis, you and I were talking off camera before we came on about something that is a pet peeve of mine. There's just something that I could never tolerate when I was a police officer, and that's animal cruelty, cruelty to children, and cruelty to elders. The most vulnerable in our society, especially elders and children. But a story came across today about this woman in Seattle, and she's suing the Blue Angels. She lives outside of an air base. She moved there. She moved there about 2 years ago, and she moved there knowing full well that she was moving outside of a military installation that has an air show every year, and she chose to move there. And she has a cat, and it seems the cat has some sort of. It sounds like my headset is starting to go on me. Hopefully I don't lose it sound. Anyway, she chose to move there knowing full well that this cat has a condition. So whenever there's the air show, the cat gets a little nervous. So she's been living there 2 years, and she's suing them because she said she had to euthanize the cat because it couldn't take the loud noises from the jets. And she told them to take their little toys and go elsewhere. Little toys? I'm sorry. I got a problem with this. I got a big problem with this. First off, she moved fully aware that the cat has a problem. She moved to an area where she knew there was going to be flyovers and training. I live right outside an Air Force base. I'm sorry, a Marine Corps Air Base. And I was fully aware of where I was moving, but I chose a place to live that, number one, was not in a flood zone because there's water all around us. And number two, I'm outside the path of the ACUs. And the only time we had flights coming over is if they had to use this one runway for special purposes. And when they were doing construction, we were warned of the hours of operation. And until the other runways are repaired, you're going to expect this. Okay, it's part of living here. We chose to live here. She chose to live there. And rather than, when this air show came into town, contacting the base and asking them, what's the schedule? So I know that when you're going to be flying over where I live, I can take the cat, go elsewhere. Or I can board the cat in another town. Or I can decide to go on vacation and take the cat with me. Or maybe I'll talk to my vet and see if there's some sort of a calming medication or something I can do to keep the animal calm if I can't leave the house for whatever reason. She did none of these things. She did no due diligence, and she did nothing as a responsible owner to protect that animal and care for it. And the easy way out for her was to euthanize the animal. Hey, Blue Angels, if you're listening to me, and if you're the commanding officer of that base out there in Seattle, countersue this woman for causing you harm, causing harm to your reputation, causing harm to your ability to function as a military unit. Sue her butt off.
Well, like I said when we talked before we came on the air, my cats get nervous every time there's thunder and lightning, and they're looking for a safe place, under something or try to get inside of a cabinet. But if I was this woman, I mean, who would she sue? God, Well,
No, I mean, this past month, we've had some severe thunderstorms, and I'm only about 3 hours away from you, approximately. So whatever hits you hits me a couple hours later. And we literally were having lightning strikes on our property. My neighbor across the street was saying he was watching, it was like fireworks going all around all my house. I said, well, thank God I got a good lightning rod working. And of course, my animals got upset, but you calm them down. You know what to do. You hug them in a blanket or whatever. You give them calming treats or something like that. There's also something called Feel Away, a little spray you spray that will help calm the animal's nerves. There's a lot of things she could have done to protect that animal. Now, this is an older cat, 14 years old. I'm sorry, my cats are up there too. The oldest one right now is 13. But you, as a responsible owner, you know what to do. And obviously, she's not a responsible owner. And if anything, she should be charged with animal cruelty.
we have a base. It's like a reserve base called Camp Landing. I would say it's about 15, 16 miles away. But when the reservists go up there once a month to do their reserve duty, you can hear the guns going off as far as tanks and things like that. And they have a sign right outside where everyone to see that rides along that base saying there will be times you will hear the sounds of freedom.
Yeah. And like I said, we've got the Marine Corps Air Station, Buford, right here. And it's the roar of thunder is the sound of freedom you hear.
Right.
And you move here knowing full well you're moving outside a military base. You know full well that for a week or two, they're going to have an air show, including the Blue Angels. You choose to move there, knowing full well and knowing that the fact that your cat is going to be upset because of the sound of freedom. And you don't take the animal out of the area while the show is going on. You don't take it to the vet to say, what can I do to get, what calming treats can I give it? Or even that Feel Away spray that I use to keep my animals calm. You don't take the cat on a vacation with you, or even go into the next town over in Starbucks, have lunch while the air show's going on. They give you the schedule. They tell you when they're going to be flying over. And they can show you the area that we call it an ACUS, the area in which the air operations are going to be. And she did none of those things. She did no due diligence and chose to move there, and she wants to sue the Blue Angels? I'm saying arrest her for animal cruelty and then countersue her for the aggravation, of course. With that said, Bridget knows that I'm on a tear. And welcome from the Heritage Foundation, Bridget Wagner. Good afternoon, Bridget. You can tell I'm on a roll today.
I mean, good afternoon, Anne. It's good to hear you.
I am an animal lover. I'm known as the cat whisperer, actually. And I'm down to 5 cats. I mean, if it's a horse or a dog or something like that, it just, the animals have an affinity to me. But when I see someone do something so stupid, to voluntarily move to an area where you know military operations or flyovers are going to occur, and then you want to sue them because they do occur? Please, I'm sorry. If she was in front of me, I'd be slapping her silly. Oh, man. I've had guys from the Heritage Foundation on for quite a long time. I'm now in my 15th year doing this, and I miss Tom Quilter. I do. But you worked with Edwin, and he just recently passed away not too long ago, just 7 days ago, a week ago. And just 3 days before he passed away, he was still writing for Heritage. Now, he was the founder of Heritage. Ronald Reagan awarded him the Presidential Medal in 1989, and he's been in the forefront of conservative thinking and activism and leadership. Put him up there with Bill Buckley. And I get National Review. And lately I've been cursing out some of the writers because they're so anti-Trump.
Right.
But I want you to talk about Ed, how you knew him and what he has done for this nation and why we should be thankful and why I chose to honor him as one of our fallen heroes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you first, Anne, for having me on, and thanks for the relationship you've had with the Heritage Foundation. I know some of my colleagues have been on before, and hello to your audience. Heritage Foundation really was such an incredible, I think, really project of Ed Feulner and Paul Weyrich in 1973. But Ed's relationship with the conservative movement goes all the way back to his college days at Regis College in Denver in the 60s. And when he first read Conscience of a Conservative with Barry Goldwater and Russell Kirk's Conservative Mind, and really it lit a fire. And he became involved with ISI, Intercollegiate Studies Institute, and really wanted to pursue these ideas. He had some professors who encouraged his thinking and really encouraged him to, kind of network with these scholars. So we had a strong background, anchored in this Catholic education at Regis College in Denver, and then broad reading of conservative scholars and political leaders at the time, obviously following the political debates. And then he went to graduate school at Wharton in Pennsylvania, and with a strong, very longtime friend of his, who became a longtime friend, Don Lipset, began thinking about what sort of coalition of like-minded individuals should they start to form together to begin to speak about these ideas. And they formed something called the Philadelphia Society. And you mentioned Bill Buckley. Bill Buckley was someone they involved in the foundation of the Philadelphia Society. Bill Buckley and Milton Friedman were involved in the founding of the Philadelphia Society. So even as a graduate student, he was very engaged. I think saw early on the importance of getting young people engaged because he was so young when he himself got involved. So he's always had this connection with academia, with ideas. He, through a fellowship, came to Washington, worked for what became later known as the Center for Strategic and International Studies, worked, I think also had an affiliation with the Hoover Institution, some really outstanding institutions across the conservative movement, and went to work on Capitol Hill and for Republican members. He was originally from the Chicago area, so he worked for first Melvin Laird of Illinois, and worked for him then when he moved over to the Defense Department. But he was back on Capitol Hill working for Congressman Phil Crane, who was in the 70s a real leader within the conservative movement. Actually, I believe ran for president at one point, but someone who was very close to the Hillsdale community and very much known as a man of ideas. So in the early 70s, I think, as Ed always described it, Dr. Feulner always described it, conservatives, if you think about these Nixon years, conservatives were considered a minority of the then minority party. It was very difficult. We think we have challenging times now. I'm sure it was much more difficult. Certainly.
Oh, it was.
I'm sure. Nixon was
Am I giving my age away?
No, not at all. Nixon was, doing some not terribly conservative things. He was expanding government, establishing the EPA and
China.
And remember the whip
trip.
Yes, remember the whip inflation now. Yes, I mean there were a number of policies. So on Capitol Hill, I think what they found as a chief of staff as he was, and so many others, that they were really not, didn't have access to staff resources and kind of the coalition activities. And they set about sort of forming their own organization. So I think just as Americans always do, roll up your sleeves and dig right in. And they formed the Republican Study Committee in 1973. There were a number of really important kind of efforts that came together in the conservative movement in 1973. So the Republican Study Committee, which today exists still on Capitol Hill and is the largest group of the conservatives within the Republican Party on the House side. The American Legislative Exchange Council, which still exists today, ALEC, is the center-right state legislators all across the country, and then the Heritage Foundation. And Ed always told the story of Heritage's founding, that they had the debate of the supersonic transport, SST, we knew it as the Concorde, and the debate happened. He said conservatives were divided on this, Republicans were divided, that it had military applications. Many thought the government should support this, and others thought this was going to be a great leap forward for civil aviation. The private sector should support it. The debate happened, the vote was cast, and apparently after the vote, a very thorough study arrived in the Congress from a think tank that existed at the time. And Ed was quite puzzled that they held the study until after the vote. And when he called to ask why that was the case, they said that they didn't want to influence the vote. And his reaction was much the same, a crinkled brow, I'm sure. His reaction was, well, they didn't tell us how to vote. They just gave us the information that was necessary for us to make a more informed vote. And that's really the kernel of the idea for the Heritage Foundation, that we should be producing the information that members of Congress need to really help them thoroughly understand an issue, to lay out the arguments, to take a principled position, not necessarily tell them how to vote, and then get them the information in advance of the vote to inform the legislative process and to actually help to change the course of public policy. So our objective is not to issue a paper regardless of the timing, but it's ultimately to affect public policy. So he stayed on Capitol Hill in 1977. Then he came to Heritage and took over as president. It was really then that I think Heritage is sort of kicked into gear, if you will. And then in preparation for the 1980 election with Ronald Reagan, we had a board member at the time who had served in a previous Republican administration and strongly recommended that Heritage help prepare the ground for the administration. He said that if you don't come into office prepared with a policy agenda, each day decisions must be made, and others will impact that. So Heritage produced the first mandate for leadership for Ronald Reagan, and that was presented to President-elect Reagan a week after the election. And in fact, the first time he gathered his cabinet members, they each had a copy of this document, and President Reagan said, this will be our blueprint. And that's really when Heritage hit the mark in 1980 and became kind of front page news in the Washington Post, kind of hit the Washington scene. I met Ed in 1981. I was still at college, and heard him speak at the University of Dallas in Texas. He had a relationship with the small Great Books Catholic University, and he was in need of someone to help him with his books and writings and speech writing, and offered me a position. And so I started working for the Heritage Foundation a week after I graduated from college, and have been there ever since, doing a number of different positions. But he's had an incredible impact, not just on the Heritage Foundation, but as I said, on the way Capitol Hill operates in some instances, and other institutions all across the conservative movement. He's remained, or did remain, on the boards of dozens of organizations, and helped to shape the conservative movement. Long answer, sorry.
I'm going to see a bunch of people now take their calculators out, because after I say that, they're going to go, all right, I know now how old she is, because I graduated in the bicentennial. So growing up during that time, I witnessed all of this. I mean, from the talk of the fall of Saigon, watching it on TV, watching the lunar landing, all that. That was my childhood growing up. And matter of fact, my first editorial was in the Long Island Press, if you remember that. July 4th of 1976, talking about the bicentennial and how
Wonderful.
it was wonderful. And I was above the fold.
Wonderful.
Here I am less
Wonderful.
than 1 month out of high school. And I was praising how the celebration was. And yet I ended it with how it has invaded even our bedroom when the gentleman meets the love of his life in the bedroom and unfurls Old Glory for her. If you remember the prophylactics.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so I've been conservative since the day I was born. It's in my DNA. I say this. Having met Jacob Javits at the time, I didn't know that Mark Tapscott had worked with him at the time that I was visiting his office with my family. So this is something I've followed my entire life, and as I said, up until a few days before he passed away, on the 15th, he wrote this article, the next year's 250th July 4th celebration. And here it is, 50 years later, we're talking about him.
Right, right. Exactly. Yes. And I know he was very excited about the 250th. In fact, Governor Youngkin of Virginia had just, I think fairly recently, maybe this year, appointed him to the Board of Overseers of Mount Vernon. So he had a great love of history. He was Virginian by choice and lived not too far from Mount Vernon. So, certainly was steeped in that kind of history of the area. So yes, the 50 years spanning from before the bicentennial to the semi-quincentennial.
It's funny that you mentioned Glenn Youngkin because on the 9th, he's going to be here in Columbia, South Carolina. And Drew McKissick had left a message on my phone, saying to get my tickets before, the end of today. Mm-hmm. But I'm having a procedure on my back. Mm-hmm. So I had to text Drew back saying, sorry, I can't, because I'm not going to be able to drive up there. So I'm going to miss meeting
Governor Youngkin. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to miss meeting him. So what that those circles?
Yes.
Small circles. But it's funny because I went and did read his article. Actually, before he had passed away, and he had some major key takeaways in this one about us losing our economic liberty. And that is something that we've been screaming and yelling about, through the regulations and other areas in which government has invaded. Yes, we have freedom of speech, freedom, somewhat freedom of religion. That's questionable at this point. But our economic freedom has been dwindling and no one's paying attention to it. And this is what the heritage and what Ed was all about, making sure he was securing all of our freedoms, not just one or two.
Right, exactly. So right. And I think you're exactly right that most Americans don't even realize, with the taxes, the burden of taxes and the regulations, not just at the federal level, but, the local regulations. I think people often completely miss whether it's zoning that might restrict a business's operations or even the operation of a church, whether a church might be able to expand a parking lot or a school, whether a school might be able to be built in a particular area. One of the organizations that I'm at a conference actually in California, one of the organizations here, Napa Legal Institute, puts out something called the Faith and Freedom Index that shows the rules and regulations, laws in the states and how friendly they are to religious liberty, how much they are open to religious liberty. What are the burdens? What are the limitations just in the state level? So we tend to think of impacting religious liberty at the federal level, but there is certainly also in the state level, local level, regulations that can be limiting our freedoms, and certainly economic freedom is very, very high up on that because many of the states want our revenue and want our income, and they're very actively engaged in kind of managing our lives.
Well, the almighty dollar talks, and as wherever the dollar bill goes, that's where the popular vote is going to go, unfortunately. And that's the whole thing. I've been ranting about being dependent upon the state. And this is not what our founding fathers envisioned. Envisioned from us, we the people, upwards. And someone asked how we in South Carolina changed our education system over, where we now rank number 1 in the nation. It's ourselves, Hawaii, and I think it's Missouri. I'm not sure. It's one of the
Mm-hmm.
M states. Um, and I told them we did it from the grassroots. And
Mm-hmm.
we started where they were trying to use the DEI, and they had the LGBTQ community trying to teach women how to become lesbians in a week.
Mm.
And I'm sorry, this is not for the University of South Carolina. And we fought that. We've then
Mm-hmm.
fought the Agenda 21. And through the grassroots, we turned over our education, changed the education supervisors in the local levels and all the way up to the state level. So we've got a great one in Ellen DeWeaver. Um, but this is what Americans fail to understand. It's a work in progress. We have to be constantly at it, which is what the Heritage Foundation does.
Right, right, exactly. We've got to ever vigilant, I think is what the founders would say.
Now, Ed had a lot of what they call them Feulnerisms. I'm probably
Yes.
mispronouncing it. He had some favorite sayings. What are some of the ones that he used to have that you loved the best?
Well, they ring so true. Also, is one of the ones that we've actually have in a plaque in our offices is there are no permanent victories or permanent defeats in Washington. It's a constant battle basically to protect and expand our freedoms, but no permanent victories, no permanent defeats is one of the ones that I think is so applicable, and it's good to remind ourselves. We may think that we've suffered a defeat, but it's not over. We should continue the fight, ever vigilant, as you said. But even we should be watchful when we think we have succeeded. The other side doesn't stand still, so we need to be protecting of our freedoms and expanding where we can. Often we're working towards incremental victories. One of the other ones was uh, he believed in coalition building, working together with other organizations. So he used to say we're all about addition and multiplication, not division and subtraction. So we succeed when we can find common ground with our allies. I think very often Republicans and conservatives will be looking for those kind of differences, even within our own kind of coalition, even with allies on the right. There often are these purity tests, whether someone is compromising too much, and so we should be looking for areas where we can work together, even crossing the aisle on some issues. We wouldn't have, you mentioned schools and education, we wouldn't have the victories today on school choice if we hadn't sought out particularly inner city parents, but often inner city politicians who realized the current system was failing their children. And so you could make common ground, you could find areas where you could work together, and then really build on that. Always communicating, always working together, building strategic coalitions. So addition and multiplication, Ed was always interested in building those relationships, building up trust equity, if you will, so that people understood you did share the same values. You may have different ways of going about getting there, but we should always be looking at what is it that we're ultimately seeking to do. If it's working for the children, what are those schools that are best for them, and how do we get to those schools? And I think many parents over the last several decades have come to realize public schools, the school unions, these top-down structures don't necessarily provide the best education or the best outcomes for all children. Parents should have options that best meet the needs of their families and their children.
Well, you said something
Bridget,
very important, which Heritage, I'm sorry, Curtis, Heritage does is reaching across to other organizations. And that's something that I've always touted, because for the last 16 years, I've been running the local Tea Party.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always said, hey, listen, I may not agree with your group 100% of the time, but you and I stand in solidarity on this specific issue. Let's
Exactly.
concentrate on that. And then we
Right.
can find some way to work with everything else. But let's look at what. And so we've defeated various different resolutions and legislations our local and state government have done by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And which is what you have done. Like you worked with FAIR US over on
Mm-hmm.
HR2, and you've put together the 2025.
Hmm.
platform, which you reached across the spectrum for people to give the input on that. And what we see is in the big, beautiful bill, HR2 and 2025.
Yeah.
So there is a lot to say about finding who you can work with, even if you disagree on other issues. Go ahead, Curtis. I'm sorry.
Bridget, I don't know how well you got to know Ed, but which one of his contributions do you believe will be missed the most in journalism?
Yes, well, in journalism, I think just he had a syndicated column for many many years, and I think he had a really, I think, strong interest in connecting with, outside the Beltway, as we say here in Washington, explaining our issues, our ideas, the debates of the day to citizens, so that they could become engaged, so that they understood what was happening in Washington. So I think that perspective of communicating with citizens who may not, they may love the country, they may hate politics, they may love the country, they may not know exactly what it is about our country that makes us exceptional or unique, but always educating, always communicating so as to build those bridges, and speak so that it brings people together. He was also a very entrepreneurial. He very early on saw the potential of the internet. The townhall.com started at the Heritage Foundation. It was a partnership with National Review when the internet was still on dial-up. And I think we had to go through, CompuServe, I think maybe you would say.
I learned on key punch cards.
So yes. So that was another one of those community building across the conservative movement. So he was a risk taker. He had that entrepreneurial spirit. So even in journalism, he understood townhall.com. Let's bring columnists. Let's bring organizations. Let's bring these kind of syndicated efforts together so that we create an environment where the public can find these ideas more easily.
Well, Bridget, it has been a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you for having
And
me.
again, today's show is dedicated to Ed Feulner for his dedication to the conservative cause and bringing us the powerhouse that Heritage Foundation is now today, and for the hard work you put in too, because you're his partner in crime in many ways.
Thank you, Ann. And so nice to see you too, Curtis. Good luck with the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right. Check out Heritage at heritage.org. And if I hit the right key, here we go. Welcome back, Mac. Mike McNamara.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. I mean, matter of fact, I still have your book up here, From Trauma to Joy, that came out, reprinted this past year. You've got a new one coming out called Colleen Never Forgets. It was supposed to come out in April, but you haven't got it to the press yet.
Well, I'm supposed to get it there in the next 2 weeks. So finishing the copyright stuff and then registration with the Library of Congress and then working my way through Amazon. So it's called Colleen Can't Forget. And, it's when my nephews were murdered by their father. My dad was involved in Major League Baseball. And the story went out on ESPN. My sons were 6 and 9, and we weren't going to tell them. I mean, what do you tell your kids, right? When their uncle murders their cousins and then kills himself, and so, but because it went out on the news, all their friends were going to know. So my sons had to know, and they had to hear the truth, and they had to hear it from me. And so the book is inspired by that. I mean, when I told my sons, I said, I said their cousins had been killed, and my oldest son, who was 9, said, "Did they get in a car accident, Dad?" And I said, "No." I said their dad shot him in the head with a gun, and then he killed himself. My 6-year-old looked at me and said, he's sitting in the car next to me. His legs aren't even long enough. I'll never forget it. His legs aren't even long enough for his feet to be on the floor, right? His feet are sticking straight out. He said, "Dad, why would a dad kill their kid with a gun?" And you get to have that conversation. A year later, we were in Sacramento, where I grew up, where this happened, and we went to the cemetery. My now 7-year-old younger son, Patrick, said, "Dad, could we go to the cemetery?" So the three of us went, and it was brutal. You as a father, you want to be strong, right? I'm not that kind of strong, to see the graves of two little boys. And and you have your sons with you, right? And so, we said a prayer and we did what all families do, right? We said a prayer, we cleaned up the little grave markers, and we're walking back to my truck, and my oldest son, John, looked at me and said, "Could I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Do you think it hurt?" Right? So here's my 10-year-old son trying to understand what happened to his cousins, right, that day. And I mean, truth is age appropriate. And I know that as a parent, right? And I lied to him. I looked at him and I said, they didn't feel anything, John. One second they were asleep, and the next second they were with God. And now they're everywhere. And you can talk to them, and sometimes they'll talk back to you. But all of our kids, all our two boys and our two girls, have all learned the truth about that day when it was appropriate. And so the book is inspired by that experience. What do you do as a parent when you can't protect your child from something? And there's a whole lot of families and a whole lot of schools that are going to go through that are going through it right now with the loss of all those little kids in that flooding in Texas. What do you tell your kid? How do you teach them about that sometimes these things happen in life, right? And when these things make you sad, there's nothing wrong with you. You can't go through stuff like this without being sad. But what do you do when you're sad? Do you go in your room? Do you be by yourself? The adult version of that is I suck it up and then I go get drunk, right? And so we have a chance to teach our children as young people, right? When you're sad, you come talk to me. You come talk to your brother or sister or your mom or your grandma or your grandpa or one of your friends. And don't be afraid to talk about this because we all go through it. And so that's what the book is about. The book is about a little girl. It's named after my youngest daughter who sees something on the interstate when she's driving with her dad and then gets very quiet. I don't even articulate what she saw because it's not important. And he says, "Colleen, why are you so quiet?" She says, "Well, Daddy, you know that thing we saw?" And he says, "Yeah." And she says, "I can't forget that." And he looks at her and says, "Well, there's things I can't forget. And your mom has them, and your grandma and grandpa and your brother and sister have them. So I want you to go talk to every one of them and ask them what advice they give." So she learns all the lessons that I teach, and from trauma to joy. She learns in these conversations. Then she comes back and she's so excited. She goes, "Daddy, I've learned so much, and I'm so excited. Thank you. I know there's nothing wrong with me when these things make me sad." And he says, "I'm not done with you though." And she says, "Well, now what?" And he says, "When one of your friends is sad and they're alone, I want you to sit next to them. I want you to teach them what you've learned and help them." And so the book ends with her helping a little boy who lives down the street, whose father has moved out of their home, and his mother has told him he's never coming back. And so Colleen helps. She shows him her notes, and he copies them all, and he's so excited. She says, "Thank you, Colleen. You've helped me so much." And the book ends with him bringing his little brother back to Colleen's house, then interrupting their dinner and saying, "Colleen, could you talk to my little brother?" Right? And so she leaves dinner. She's in the doorway, and she makes eye contact with her father. And that is this journey from trauma to joy that I talk about, right? That I travel, that I teach people to travel, and we can teach children to travel. And it's really important, especially, when you can't protect your kids, and there's a lot of parents that life intervenes and you can't protect them. So what do you do? Do you send them to therapy and put them on meds for the rest of their life? I say not only no, but hell no. Teach them how to be strong people, because sadly, life's not done with them. So that's the quarter answer to the nickel question.
Well, each and every one of us do have trauma in our life.
Michael,
You cannot go through life
was there
without any
ever
sort of a trauma. Did I lose sound? Did I lose sound?
I
Can you
can
hear
hear
me?
both. I can hear both of you. I don't know that you can hear each other though.
Oh, I don't
both
know.
of
Because
us?
all right, Curtis, hang on just a second. Because I said each and every one of us have trauma in our lives. Some of us
Right.
have multiple issues of trauma, but it's how you are able then to deal with it, which is what you're teaching people. You can't change it. You're always going to have it. You're never going to forget it. But it's how you go on from that point is what the point is in both of your books, which I think adults and children should pick up and read. Go ahead, Curtis. Curtis?
I was just going to ask, did your little boys ever get to a point where they ask you Can you hear me, Michael?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear both of you.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, did your boys ever get to a point in their lives where they ask you why that happened? As in motivation for the killings of their cousin.
Yeah, I mean, what the way that would happen would be something would happen in the news, right? And then that would spawn, a conversation about, well, that's what our aunt went through. That why would somebody do that? How do you get to a place where you do that? Where I mean, and so, and again, it's age appropriate, right? So my answer to the 6-year-old son was, Patrick, sometimes people go crazy. And when they go crazy, they do crazy things. And he went crazy today. And to a 6-year-old, like, okay, I know, I think I know what crazy is. That makes sense. But when you're 18 or 25 and you have a much different conversation, what happened? You know, Obviously he was struggling, right? And he was shattered in his life, right? And this was going to destroy his life, and I can't exactly explain how that happens, how that makes sense to do that to your little babies, right? But yeah, absolutely, and it's still an ongoing conversation in our family, right? As different things happen, and our kids who are now young adults, right? Not so young anymore, but they're older, ranging from 22 to 38, and it's still a topic of conversation. So it's an opportunity. My thing to parents is, you're going to begin a conversation with your kids that's going to last a lifetime. And what you really are trying to do is, teach them about life. Life gets hard. Life gets horrible sometimes. And it happens. But what do we do with it? And the first thing is, you learn how to be strong. You learn the truth. It's never going to go away. You are never going to forget this stuff. And when you struggle, that means you're a normal human being. You can't go through this without struggling. What do you do when you struggle? Right? Do you go get drunk? Do you stay in your room and play video games? Do you isolate yourself? No, 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 no. That's not how we do it. We talk about it. We're not afraid to go there with each other, right? We help each other. You go outside, you get physically active, and you let those endorphins help your brain out on that day. You write the deep thoughts that you're feeling, right? And then the transformational event is learning how to help somebody else, learning how to help somebody else when you stick your hand into their darkness, because life shoved them into the valley of the shadow of death, right? And you look at them and you say true things. And I will tell you, one of the most powerful things I say is, you're never going to get over it. And people just look at me and say, what? I said, yeah. I got told that the day I saw one Marine decapitated and 3 other Marines, get killed in a helicopter crash. And we were trying to save, the 3 of them, and everybody wound up dying. And it was the single best piece of advice I've ever got in my life. Right. And the whole thought is, you don't ever get over it. I mean, how could you, right? There's no drug, there's no amount of words you can say that makes it good. When you struggle, it means you're a normal human being, and you can still live a great life. Okay. But here's the path that you've got to walk. Right. When you struggle, don't jump in a bottle of alcohol. That will destroy you, right? And all these very practical things that you can do to learn to understand it, to become stronger, and then to help others using this wisdom, and thereby transforming your life. And so the children's book is simply a way, to kind of make that message age appropriate.
There's so many things you've said here, and it takes me in so many different paths. But even watching as you talk about what's going on and what has happened to you and how you arrived at this point, you can see the pain in you, but you are dealing with it, and that's the whole thing. You're never going to forget. You're never going to really get over it. But what you do from that point on speaks volumes, because you yourself had your problems with addiction. I mean, we're not taught how to deal with adversity in today's society. And it's always, you find the easy way out. And someone had written an excellent piece in National Review, and they said, we are now living in the age of feelings. It's no longer the age of faith or age of reasoning or the age of enlightenment. It's the age of feeling. and the touchy-feely things. So it's okay to feel bad and then to make everyone else feel bad around you is how people are approaching it in today's society. But you're showing there's an alternative. Yeah, you've been hurt. Yeah, you've been down a bad path. But what you do from this point on, how you pick yourself up and how you help others along the way speaks volumes.
Well, if you look at our suicide numbers, I mean, they're terrible. And, we make young people fragile. Every time somebody farts wrong at middle school, they get everybody together and they ask them, how does this make you feel? Right. And I think back, I got asked about my feelings when my mother was spanking me. That's when she said that. Right. How many times have I told you not to go on that construction site? Starting a backhoe? Are you out of your mind? Whack, 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 whack. She's smoking her Parliament cigarettes, right? And she would have that thing talking trash to me while she's spanking. And I'd look over my shoulder. She looks like Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, right? Spanking me and talking trash to me. That's what I got asked about my feelings, right? That's no kidding. And so if you're halfway paying attention as a young kid, the conclusion is the world really cares about me and really cares about my feelings. And then you graduate from high school, what do you find out? Nobody
No,
cares about you.
no one
And
cares.
nobody cares about your feelings. What a stud. I mean, but we do that to people. We do that to young people. And so we create more fragile people. But the good news is that look, they're human, they're young human beings. They're not afraid of the truth. I can tell you that right now. And I have a saying, the truth lands with a thud and needs no salesman. When I look at people and say, you'll never get over it, they just look at me. And I say, what do you think of that? And they'll say, I've never heard anybody say that. And I said, but what do you know about it? Like, well, how could I? And I tell them, there's no medication, there's no amount of talking about it that makes it good. So what do you do with it? And I said, let me show you a path that will lead to the most beautiful moments in your life. The most beautiful moments. And so I start doing this with Marines, right? And then two women in my hometown of Sacramento, California, Susan Keeley and Peggy Cooney, they said, you need to do this with anybody. I said, okay, how do I do it? They said, you need to do seminars online. I said, I don't know how to do it. They said, we'll put it together if you'll do it. And here's what I found out. There's no difference between going to war, being a cop, and being a rape victim, right? They're just different paths into the valley. At the end of the day, we're all standing down by the river at the bottom of the valley of the shadow of death, looking at each other and go, what do we do?
You
And
climb out.
so the way that the nation deals with it though is they're going to put us on medications and you can go to forever therapy. And it just doesn't work. All you got to do is look at suicide statistics. We have more people on more medications, going to more therapy, and we continue to set suicide records. What's wrong with this? And so my thing is, I don't want to walk down the valley. I want to walk out of the valley. So can somebody teach me how do I get my ass out of here? And that's what I do. Both books, they're blueprints. This is what you do. If you just want to talk about it, I'm not for you. But if you want to change your life, I have a book you should read. And I have a book, if your children have to go through this, you should read with your children. And that's what the book is designed to be read, with a parent and a child. So you can have these discussions.
I was supposed to talk to you about Andy Byron, the guy that got caught on the Coldplay Kiss Cam. But before I go into that, Trump signed executive order yesterday and dealing with the homelessness. And we are having a record number of homeless. Over 250,000 Americans are homeless on the street. And we've never seen this in the history of our nation. And a lot of it is through alcoholism, drug addiction. A lot of them are veterans and a growing number of female veterans. Now, I think he's taking a step in the right direction to begin with to say, hey, listen, if we find that you're homeless and you're under these certain circumstances, we will take you and find a place for you to go, whether it's into, a committed treatment or a halfway house or something. I think it's the right. We have back in the 60s and 70s, up until a certain point, you were allowed to say, hey, listen, this person is in need of constant care. They need some mental assistance, whether it's through therapy or through institutionalization. We took care of them and they weren't living on the street. But something happened in the late 70s, 80s, when all of a sudden these institutions were the bad guys. Some of them were being run really piss poorly, yeah, and it should have been criminal charges on them, but they turned around and canned the whole system. And now we're paying for it today. And we're seeing it. Are you agreeing with what the president is doing at this point, saying we need to address this, need to address the root causes of the alcoholism, the drug addiction, the trauma, and help these people back on a pathway to society?
Well, I mean, think about it. All those mental health institutions, and you're right, they were not, a lot of them were not very well run. But we emptied those out, and I think it was a Supreme Court decision that said you can't lock somebody up like that. That was the impetus of it. And so we've emptied those institutions, and now those people are on the street. A lot of them, most of them. Excuse me.
You take your time.
And the veteran population, there's footnotes that go with veterans, right? Once we began the all volunteer force, we're not a cross section of America anymore. We recruit heavily from young people that are looking to get out of town at the age of 17, 18, and 19. A large percentage of that population comes from very, very bad circumstances, right? Abuse, sexual abuse, right? Grow up in poverty. And so the military is a way out. Well, with them come a lot of what are called adverse childhood experiences. So they come through the door with that. If you want to understand veteran suicide, most veterans never go to combat, right? And even the ones that go to the theater of war, very few of them are actually involved in the trigger pulling, the daily dance of life and death, right? And so this veteran, what's his problem? What's her problem? It starts when they're children and they're abused, and we never give them an effective method of coping with it, right? And then they get divorced, and now they're drinking, and now they lose their home, and now they're homeless on the street. And so to me, you got to create, and to me, so what you're talking about, we're going to have facilities where these people can go and they're going to be treated very humanely. They're going to be loved. They're going to be taken care of. But you got to devote a lot of assets to that. It takes a lot of human beings to do that and a lot of money, right? But if you want to solve the problem, because a lot of these people, if you create facilities and give them a little place to live, they won't live there because they have serious mental illnesses, right? Okay, so how do you deal with that? Well, you have to get the right people involved. You got to create safe spaces, and then you got to have enough care for them that they'll stay, and then you can help them and hopefully change their lives. And so I do believe the president did the right thing. We cannot just take our mental health problem and dump it in the cities of the United States. It's wrong. It's wrong, and it's horrible when you see that stuff.
You know, I know a lot of organizations have been going out to help these men and women. Our local AMVETS does it, so and the VFWs do it. You do have some other nonprofit organizations trying to help, but the thing is that we have turned around and just dumped them on the street. So they've been traumatized to begin with, and now that they're alone on the street, they're going through a whole nother level of trauma. And instead of treating them, as you say, humanely, we treat them as the outcasts. So in order to survive, they end up fighting back. And this is where we get the high level now of crime. And I think, as you said, he is taking the step in the right direction, the hand out to give you a hand up.
Well, and I will tell you this, and I was just thinking about this last week. I don't know what I saw, but I saw somebody homeless, right? The big shopping cart, the tent, and they built this complex. We give them money, we give them food, we make it right easy to stay there, right? So we subsidize this terrible life that they live on the street, and it's fueled by mental illness. So we've got to find a way to create safe spaces, healthy spaces, and get them off the street. Because the other piece is, I live in Southern California. San Diego spent billions of dollars, right, completely renovating the southern part of the city that was piers and ports and things like that. It's beautiful. It was then overrun by homeless people, right? The smell of urine, feces, and those businesses that have gone down there invested millions of dollars, right? we can't sustain this. So, it's the lifeblood of a community, the business districts, right? We've got to take care of them. We've got to take care of these people. And so, and we can do it, but again, it's a mental health issue, and we've got to approach it like that, right? I mean, they're not bad people, and so we've got to create safe spaces with the right facilities, and to get them back into our culture. And then we also have to understand is that some of them just will never do that, sadly. Their mental illnesses are such that to be medicated is a lot of times the way they'll live their lives because of the conditions they have, and we have to accept that too. And so it's a really hard problem. Homelessness is not about losing a job and sleeping on the street. It is about a lot of people with serious mental illnesses, and a lot of it starts with trauma, right? And again, my book is for people that don't have serious mental illnesses, which is about 96% of the population, right? I tell people if you have a serious mental illness, I'm not for you. I'm kind of a life coach guy. I'm a leader. I've led people my whole life, and so after you deal with your serious mental illness, and what am I talking about? Bipolar, schizophrenic, personality disorder, clinical depression, not being sad, right? But clinically depressed, and that's about you know 4.5% of the American population. So what do we do with it? And then know that you can take a horse to water, you can stick his head in the water. So some of these people, even if you do all that, you're not going to affect, which is sad. And but that is part of that world of that world of serious mental illness.
Right, right. And what, not only that, you mentioned the local businesses and the people that live in the area. They're also now traumatized by what
Oh
they
yeah.
have to walk and pass every single day of their life. And they're stuck in a situation that they may not be able to afford to get themselves out. So as they see
Oh
their business go down the drain, their property
yeah.
values drop, and they get nothing back in return, it's a whole nother level of trauma, which now
Yeah.
brings me over to this other guy on the kiss cam, because it's not just him, being
Right.
embarrassed and deciding to resign, but now it's his family, it's his friends, it's his company that are now paying the price for his bad action.
Yeah, again, bad things happen. And when they happen on TV and it gets in the media, what do you do for that? Well, to me, the path is the same. Now, I don't know if that guy is an honorable man or not. I don't know what's going on in his personal life, and I don't really like to judge people. But here's what I know. When something bad happens, there's two paths you could take. You could take the honorable path. You can do the hard things, which are the right things to do. You can look at people and say, I made a terrible mistake and I'm sorry, right? And you can own it. And you can spend the rest of your life proving to people that I'm not that guy, right? I made a mistake. Because we all make mistakes. Or you can lie about it, you can blame other people, and you cannot take responsibility. One way, the right path, you can transcend the mistake, right? If you want to continue to lie and do that, you are you're making everything worse. And that wound will not go away. These wounds don't go away. And that's my point to people is that, you can apologize, but it doesn't make it go away. Right? It is by the way you live your life that people either accept your apology because they see that, your act of contrition, if you will, to use a Catholic term, and they see your remorse, and they can tell by the way you live, or you can, go on doing what you do. And in that case, what happens is people will create distance from them. I can't be around him anymore, right? He's not
Hmm.
the guy I thought he was. And so there's real consequences to this, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people just because somebody's biologically related to you or grew up with you doesn't give them the right to screw your life up anytime they want to. So if that person won't do the right things, then maybe what you have to do is say, you have to stay
Yep.
out here
Been there,
because,
done that.
right,
I hear
you are a habitual damager. And when you damage me, I then hurt my kids and my spouse because they feel this hurt I feel. And and i'm not proud to say this, but you got, I mean, even if they're family members, You cannot let them screw your life up just because of that biological relationship. You could, and here's the deal: you could still love them, you could still help them. You can't let them screw your life up anymore.
No, I have a favorite saying: "I may forgive you, but I will not forget."
True,
And with
true.
that, not forgetting, it helps me to protect myself from further damage. And yeah, I will. I'll talk to you. Fine, whatever. But you get to that point where I'm going to say, enough is enough. I'm walking away. And you got to be able to be strong enough to do that, which is what you do teach in your book. And I'm looking forward to the next one coming out, which should be coming out the end of next month now.
Yep, 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 yep.
Well, where can
You
people find you?
well, wait a minute. He got cut off. He went to say something, and I think I stepped on him. So
I just wanted to say that by you sharing this, I think it opened the eyes of a lot of people to some of the struggles, a lot of people going through, especially when it comes to tragedies. I'm prior military myself, and I saw a lot of things, that a lot of normal civilians wouldn't see when it comes to death and whatnot. So, you know, as they always say, most people that have been in a war, they don't want to talk about these things, but sometimes it's good to get that out of your system and move on. That's all.
Well,
well,
Mac,
and
where
what
could,
I
I was
what
going
I
to just
try to
ask you because I
do.
got, I'm sorry,
I'm
I got
sorry.
my next guest lined up for us.
Okay,
Where can people find you, real quick?
come on, Amazon.com. Right? They own the world, I think. So yeah, from Trauma to Joy is on there right now, and Colleen Can't Forget will be up there hopefully in the next couple weeks.
Oh, Mac, it is a pleasure. And again, we welcome you on anytime. Somehow or other, we're going to work it on. We're going to come on a lot more often.
I would love to. I always enjoy it, and thank you guys so much for having me.
And
All
God
right.
bless. Take care.
Take care.
All right, check it out From Trauma to Joy up on Amazon. And it is Sam, I am Sam Faddis, a friend of the show for a long, long time. Welcome back, Sam.
It is great
Listen,
to be back. How are you guys doing?
All right.
oh, we're just fine. I have to apologize because I've got this crazy camera. Every time I move the cursor on my screen, it zooms me out and in. And I can't figure out
Sorry.
how to undo that.
That's all right.
Sam, you've got a great magazine people can subscribe to called A&D, And Magazine, that you brought onto Substack a couple of years back. And you wrote an excellent piece just recently called A Letter to Senior CIA Leadership. The problem is not perception, it is reality. And whoa, boy, what is breaking up with the Russia Gate and so on and so forth. Holy moly. What's going on here, Sam?
Well, I mean, I think on some level, what's happening is that we are seeing finally recognition of what many of us have known, right? I mean, instinctively have known, but the critical element now is we're actually talking about it, and we're apparently now at least contemplating doing something serious about it. I mean, the bottom line is we talk about CIA, and I should say, by the way, just to look as a caveat, I'm going to say some things that are extremely critical of senior people in the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm not condemning everybody that's been in CIA. I'm not condemning a lot of very good, dedicated men and women that are out in the world doing really, really good things. But there are also obviously a significant number of people at the top who lost their minds a long time ago and lost all sense of what their duty was and what their job was and who they worked for. And so, what we're finally beginning to talk about in a serious way is that some very powerful people, up to potentially including the President of the United States at the time, effectively decided they were going to stage a coup in the United States of America. They weren't going to let Donald Trump be elected. And then once he was elected, they were going to depose him from office and sort of burn the entire constitutional republic to the ground. And so we're finally beginning to talk seriously about the details of that and charging people, potential indictments and so forth. So, we're no longer talking about maybe John Brennan, former head of CIA, will be charged with perjury. Now we're talking about treason. We're really beginning. And, look, my political leanings are manifestly obvious, right? But this is the ultimate apolitical thing, right? If we get to a world in which powerful people get to decide they don't give a damn who the American people choose, they will install the ruler. Well, it's all over, right? I mean, then we're done. Then you don't live in a republic anymore. So very momentous. We will see where it goes, obviously.
Well, it's funny because I've been doing now, this is my 15th year doing this. And I do remember speaking to you and other people I've interviewed in the past when this was just starting to break. I mean, when Hillary Clinton went to Fusion GPS, we were talking about it. When there was rumors of Russiagate, we were saying, wait a minute, what? Wait for the other shoe to drop now. And sure enough, they came out with this Steele dossier. And we were already debunking that before anyone else in mainstream media, or I should say lamestream media,
Right.
wanted to address it. So now here we are 8 years later. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're talking about 9 years later. Going on 10 because Fusion GPS was back in 2015.
Yep.
And we saw it coming. Why didn't the rest of the nation?
Well, I mean, I think there are the people who don't want to see, who are so ideologically motivated that they convince themselves kind of the ends justify the means and anything is justified. And then there are the large number of people in the middle who, are trying to feed the kids and get them off to school and get the truck fixed and make the checking account balance. And they don't have all day to dig past what the legacy media feeds them. But, you talk about the dossier. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. This is just one piece of the Russiagate, but right. So Michael Steele is this retired, Christopher Steele, I'm sorry, is this retired British intelligence officer. He's hired by Fusion GPS, which is a think tank in quotes in DC, right? They manufacture stuff for whoever pays them. And
smear campaigns.
And exactly. And who are they working for? They're working for Hillary Clinton's campaign's law firm. And all the bills for all of this, by the way, are paid by Hillary Clinton's campaign and by the Democratic National Committee. So let's not dance around this. Hillary Clinton's campaign, cleverly, they use the lawyers always inserted here because what that means is when you're trying to unwrap it, you will run right into attorney-client privilege. The attorneys can't be compelled to testify against their client. But Hillary Clinton's campaign hires this guy Steele to go produce a hit piece. It's garbage. It's nonsense. It was always garbage. It was always nonsense. I ran sources for a really long time. I debrief people all the time. I talked to guys peddling garbage all the time. Everybody knew this was garbage. It was the kind of thing CIA, the guy came in and told you this in an embassy, you would laugh. You might send it home to amuse people. Look at what this guy told me, but nobody would take it seriously. The no sourcing, and obviously the motives are crystal clear. You're feeding me something designed to kill Hillary Clinton's political opponent, politically. Okay, so this is trash. And yet it was picked up by really powerful people. And they pushed this narrative, and they didn't do it unintentionally. They didn't do it because they were sloppy or they didn't know it. The whole thing was orchestrated from the beginning, all to destroy a guy running for president of the United States. And then they used the same thing to try to remove him from office once he won the 2016 election. I mean, that's treason. That's a whole series of federal crimes for which people need to go to prison. Again, I don't care whether it was being done to a Democrat or Republican or an independent. You can't, that's unacceptable. So there have to be consequences. And now maybe we will finally see consequences.
Well, it's amazing how they just timed everything. Now, it was known as the Clinton campaign strategy. They went straight into the Obama office. They sat down with the president and his advisors. It was Brennan, it was Clapper, good Lord, I can't even remember half of the others, McCabe. They knew it was bogus from day one, and yet they timed each release specifically to interfere with the Trump campaign. They released it hoping that he would get impeached as president.
Yes.
And I mean, it got to the point where the two FBI attorneys, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, their email exchange was actually turned into a play that they had at the Kennedy Center, reading the emails and laughing over the way they were looking to destroy Donald Trump and his whole entire campaign and cabinet. So,
yeah, well, and they did it, and they did, again, I know I'm repeating myself as I want to do, but they did this with malice aforethought. They did not stumble upon the dossier and then find it useful, which would be bad enough. They hired the guy to steal to write a hit piece. He was paid by them to write a hit piece to use against Trump. Again, and then look at the CIA piece. The director of the Central Intelligence Agency is vouching for this and taking this serious. Now, a junior officer in his first tour would have read this dossier and said, I'm sorry, Hillary Clinton had a guy put together this garbage piece of nonsense with no sourcing. I'm not taking this seriously. But all of a sudden, the director of CIA is all over it, disregarding it. It doesn't matter. Senior people protest and say, come on, man, we can't use this as the basis of an intel report, an intel assessment. He's like, I don't want to hear that. I'm telling you, we're going to use it as that in and of itself is mad. And I can tell you, when I was serving, if somebody came to you with information that took you within 10 miles of American domestic politics, everybody would have been like, oh, I am not getting sucked down that road. We don't collect on Americans. We don't mess with American domestic politics. And I am not an idiot. I'm not getting dragged into that. I don't want anything to do with your stuff. Stay away from it. That would have been our attitude. No,
Sam,
find somebody else to write. Yes, sir.
Yeah, two of the most despicable characters in this, and we haven't mentioned, I believe, is Comey and Schiff, because they were out there, disputing what we all could see. Do you believe it would be better for us to go through a military tribunal than civilian courts with this? Since we talked about treason.
I do think that we're talking about some of these people that should be charged with treason. Do I think we should go to a military court? I don't. I mean, I understand why people end up there because, well, let's face it, because they don't trust the civilian court system anymore. I think we have to be really careful and really sober here. I mean, I 100% believe there are people that need to be charged with felony federal offenses and need to go to prison. I'm not pulling any punches on that, including treason in some cases. But I think we also have to realize how close we are to losing the republic, because these people have taken us to the edge of where everything in terms of elections and the Constitution is just going to be like a puppet show, like a fig leaf, right? We're going to vote, but it isn't going to make any difference because they're going to sit in the imperial city and they'll tell us who the king is. So we got to be really careful as we proceed, in my view, to be really sober. Like, okay, we know what you guys did. We're going to color completely within inside the lines, because we got to put the country back together at the end of the day. I do believe that we are talking about potentially seeing indictments on these kinds of charges and people go to prison. Having also practiced law before I was in the agency, I don't want to pretend like that's easy. I mean, come on, man, what are we talking about? Who's going to come out of the woodwork to represent these guys as far as lawyers? The highest priced guns in the sense of trial counsel in the country. The top drawer folks will come out to defend them, and they will use every trick in the book. So it'll be painful, but I think we need to go through the pain.
You mentioned something earlier about the CIA operating on domestic soil,
Mhm.
and that is not what they're tasked with. The FBI is solely for domestic soil, the CIA for international. And yet, starting with Bush 1 and through today, those lines have been blurred. You've got the FBI now operating overseas and the CIA operating here domestically. Uh, how do we pull that back and bring them back to their original? I'm trying to think of the
Charter.
Yeah, charter is a good word for it. I think we just have to commit ourselves to doing it, right? I mean, so CIA, I'll tell you how clear this is or was. You know, if I got a source, he's an Iranian, and I'm running him, I'm in Turkey, and I meet this guy, and he happens to, for some reason, travel to the United States of America. Unlikely for many Iranians, but let's just run with that. Would I, as a CIA officer, maybe take the opportunity to meet him on U.S. soil, an existing asset? Yeah, he's going to be in New York. Gives us an opportunity to potentially meet under more relaxed circumstances, talk to him. We're not bopping around at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about getting shot. Okay. But to do that, you have to have permission of the FBI, formal permission. So I'm a CIA officer. I want to do that. Or you got an office in Washington, D.C. They want to meet a guy, a foreign source downtown. The Bureau has to be notified, and the Bureau has to give formal permission. And I'll tell you how serious that was taken. Back probably at least 10 years ago now, some guys from headquarters, CIA headquarters outside D.C., started meeting with a source that they had in Washington, D.C. It was a foreign source. It had not an American citizen. And they stopped notifying the FBI that they were doing it. So just to make a point, the FBI waited until they were in the middle of a hotel meeting in McLean or somewhere and basically came and kicked in the door and took everybody into custody and said, we don't know who the hell you guys are and what you're up to, and we need to find out. They obviously knew exactly who the heck they were arresting. They knew that they were arresting agency officers and a source, and it wasn't directed at the United States. It was their mechanism for saying, we're the 800-pound gorilla inside the United States. You have no charter to operate here unless we give you permission. Maybe we need to remind you of that. And obviously the message was received and they got their act together, right? But that's how clear that is. That the Bureau was like, no, you guys don't do anything inside the United States that we don't approve. And it absolutely should be that way. Yeah. I mean, Americans don't trust spy organizations. I hope that never changes. We don't want people crawling around in our soil spying on us. That goes against everything the country's about.
And yet we see what has happened to Donald Trump with him being spied upon. His house, Mar-a-Lago, was then raided. He had members of his staff go to prison. Papadopoulos, Navarro, Flynn had his own career wrecked. And Steve Bannon, yeah. And we've seen they've gone after everyone in his circle, including his own family members. And yet they were allowed to get away with it. So do we see any real ramifications coming out of this in the end? Do we see us regaining our republic?
Well, look, I think it is critical that we must see ramifications. I mean, when you talk to Americans of all stripes, I think one of the things you hear, I'm sure you guys hear it, is whatever happened to accountability and consequences.
Accountability, yeah.
Right? At what point does somebody pay a price for this? Don't tell me. I mean, this is when they started talking about charging John Brennan, former head of CIA, at the heart of all this with perjury. And I'm like, come on, man, are you kidding me? First of all, the statute of limitations is probably run. But in any event, that's like giving a guy a traffic ticket for trying to overthrow the republic. Those aren't consequences. What are you going to do? Spend 3 years in court and then give him, 60 days suspended sentence and fine him? That's not what needs to happen here. People need to go to prison for significant periods of time.
Yeah,
What's
what
that?
was
What's
that
that
guy?
line from that movie National Treasure? Right? Somebody's got to go to prison, Ben.
Oh
That's
yeah. What was the name of that guy? Sandy Burger or whatever. That was stuffing
Oh,
classified stuff,
it's his shirt, yeah, and it's down his pants.
and they
Yeah.
just slapped him on the wrist.
Well, there was something that I saw yesterday. I believe it was Alan Dershowitz on Newsmax. He was asked the question about the statute of limitations. But this seems to be an ongoing conspiracy that is still going on even through today, which means every time they commit one of these offenses against the American public and the president, it is it extends the
Ongoing
statute of limitations.
yeah.
So
Potentially
maybe
that resets the clock, and there's no statute of limitations as far as I know on
on
treason.
treason.
So there are,
exactly.
but this is the kind of stuff when I say, you know, when you go to war against these guys in the sense of trying to put them in prison, which they need to be, you're going to have to be prepared for this, right? You're going to, they are not going to show up, plead guilty, and it's going to all happen. You're going to have to go to war, and it's going to take some significant period of time. But I definitely think it's doable. And I am encouraged by the fact that Tulsi Gabbard now is talking about a lot of whistleblowers coming forward. Because it wasn't like Brennan and two other guys sat in a room and they're the only people who know anything about this. But I think up until now, those people who knew things were like, well, I'm not talking, man. What am I going to, I'm going to talk against these guys because then I'm going to get handled. Like I have no confidence anybody's going to do anything with the information. And hopefully that's changed.
Well, I hope
Well,
that they get to them before they disappear or are found floating in the Potomac.
Yeah.
well, what we also have to do is also hold mainstream media. They have to have their feet to the fire also, because the New York Times and Washington Post produced report after report after report on anonymous sources. So I'm sorry, that's libel. That's defamation of character.
Yeah.
And each one of these individuals, McCabe, Comey, Brennan, all the whole crew, either got cushy TV gigs or great book deals. And they were hired by, as he calls it, MSDNC, or I call it the Clinton News Network, CNN. Um, they have to be held accountable too. So I think it's going to be a multi-pronged attack to bring this whole thing down. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is a great start because she obviously has enough now to start issuing indictments.
Yeah. Look, I think it's critical for the fate of the country. And I know that's not hyperbole. I mean, we have reached a point in our history where you got handfuls of powerful people in the capital city, and they think that they don't really have to care what the American people say. Now, I get it that any democratic system, a lot of people are not going to be happy with the result on any given day, and nobody's pretending it's perfect, but it's better than all the other systems. And I've probably said this to you before, sometimes these analogies between where we are and where the Romans were when the Republic fell get a little overdone, but I think it's appropriate in this case. I mean, they reached a point where instead of the people voting and deciding who would rule, it was whoever was the most powerful person in Rome, most powerful group of people, just installed a guy on the throne. And they
Yeah.
lost all of their freedom and became an empire and were basically slaves from that point on. So
Well, we
we're
see
right
this,
there.
but we saw this with Hillary Clinton when she was running for Senate in the state of New York, which is why I left before she got sworn in. She was getting money through China, through
Mhm.
Chinatown. These people that didn't have any money suddenly were making tens of thousands of dollars in donations. They didn't have it. It was being funneled through there. Chinese agent did go to prison for that. And then she's running for president. And now there's instances where they're saying she was not mentally competent to run
Mhm.
for president. She was having a breakdown. And they were caught on film where she was collapsed into the limo. We now have a president who just left office that we knew for a fact when he was running for office, he was incompetent. And I kept on screaming, saying that Jill should be charged for elder abuse for making him run for president. So I think the American public is starting to wake up, and maybe this may be the demise of the Democratic Party and the deep state machine.
Well, I hope so. I mean, my grandfather was a Democratic congressman way back in the day, right? And he
Not your
was
grandpappy's Democratic Party anymore.
well, precisely. If Charles Isaiah were here today, and he would say, "I don't see a Democratic Party, man. I don't know what that is. Some sort of communist abomination." But I mean, he was a Democrat because for him it was the party of the working man. He went on and became a very successful guy, but nobody gave him anything. He got there by just hard, continuous work, fighting in a couple of wars, etc. And that was what the Democratic Party was to him, the party of the average man and woman and standing for them. Now, somehow, it is the party of an elite that thinks they get to rule and just feeds whoever they got to lie. They just lie to whoever they got to lie to get them to continue to support it.
And I believe you're right about the elites, because I really believe it was the elites that were behind the auto pen.
Yeah,
They knew
100%.
Biden couldn't operate, so they operated for him.
Well, I mean, that's the perfect situation for them, isn't it? It's like, this guy's plant life.
Let me get a pardon.
And we'll just run. We'll just do whatever we want and run his signature on it. I mean, good God, Hunter Biden gets a pardon? Are you kidding me?
I mean, for crimes that haven't even committed
That's the only
yet.
one he signed, though. That's
Here,
the
Hunter,
only one that's legitimate.
you're pardoned for everything you've ever done, anything you intend to do, might want to do.
Yeah,
think about it.
Somebody got carried away.
You were talking about China. I mean, good God, Hunter Biden's laptop. You know, you look at the thing. I have a copy of the hard drive. I've had it for years now. It's like, well, to start with, there's tens of millions of dollars coming from Chinese spies to the Biden family. Is that a problem? Because the guy's the vice president. He's about to become president, and Chinese spies are handing him millions of dollars. I don't know. I think that might be a bit of an issue, a bit disqualified. So we got to bury this.
Well, Sam, we're down to our last 3 minutes. It has been a pleasure as always. I'm sorry I haven't had you on sooner, but I've been reading your stuff. We see each other up on Substack. People can find A&D magazine on Substack, along as with your site too there. God bless you, Sam. We're going to get you back more often.
Guys, very nice to see you.
All right. God bless.
Take
care, Sam.
All right. We are out of time, and we've got Tomei Sellers coming on next week, and I just hooked someone else new. Oh, Brandon Strucker is going to be on next week also. He's got a rally going on this weekend. So, guys, this is all we got for the show. So, Curtis and I say good night and God bless.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Our battle cry across America. We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted. America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save